The Nürburgring 24 Hours is so incredible that it must be seen to be believed. Ultra-fast GT3s battling for overall victory as they navigate the punishing 25-kilometer course while dodging slower touring car traffic. The 2025 edition was an absolute classic and provided another wild and controversial finish, with the two German powerhouses of ROWE BMW and Manthey Porsche fighting all the way to the checkered flag. And as Preining makes his way around the pace lap, with the die-hard fans lining the course, he has a clear view out in front of his GRELLO Porsche, thanks to the ringmeister himself, Kelvin Estre, who put this 911 car on pole position. So, as Preining makes his way to the green flag, his task is clear: to take advantage of the clear track in front of him and pull away from the field behind. Meanwhile, further back in 17th position, Farfus, who will be starting this number 98 BMW that missed out on top qualifying, has a huge amount of work to do to clear the cars ahead and catch that GRELLO Porsche. So come join me for the next 35 minutes or so and ride shotgun with the best GT3 drivers on the planet as they navigate us through the world's most heart-stopping round-the-clock race. Preining slams the throttle as the race goes green, and Farfus is wasting absolutely no time as he makes his way past make that 4 cars before he even crosses the start-finish line. He drafts up alongside and then past Aston Martin and that golden black BMW as well, as he considers making it 3 wide with the 2 cars out front, with dust being kicked up and bodywork flying through the tight Yokohama S. This first lap around the Grand Prix circuit is always so fraught, with everyone battling for position before they head onto the tight and tricky Nordschleife. Farfus was shuffled back to 13th position through that first corner as he tries to fight back around the outside of the 7 Conrad Lamborghini. They go 2 by 2 through this fast left-hander as the Lamborghini fights back around the outside of Farfus, as Farfus makes it 3 wide around that golden black car as they make their way into Dunlop Curve. Farfus pokes his nose up the inside of the Lamborghini, but thinks better of it as the Audi this time fights back around the outside. As I said, this first lap is always so fraught around this Grand Prix circuit, with everyone fighting for position as Farfus thinks about making a move through the Schumacher S, but thinks better of it and settles in behind the Lamborghini that kicks up gravel through the exit of that fast right-hander. Farfus has a run, pokes his nose to the right, then to the left as he dives up the inside into this tight left-hander. Out front, we can just barely see that GRELLO Porsche still leading the field as Farfus makes his way through this right-hander and tucks in behind the number 44 Falcon Porsche. He pulls to the right-hand side with his BMW stretching its legs on the straight as he closes in on another Porsche. Farfus has a massive run as they head into the left-right chicane that marks the final corner of this Grand Prix circuit, but tucks in behind that number 48 car as they make their way through that fast sequence of corners and into this tight left-hander that leads onto the Nordschleife. Farfus made up an incredible 7 positions in that first trip around the Grand Prix circuit, but now that they're on the Nordschleife, this tight and twisty section of course where it's so tricky to overtake, he settles in behind that number 48 Porsche, while up front the number 911 Porsche of Thomas Preining continues to stretch its legs with its flat 6 singing as that second position drifts further and further away. And as he makes his way through this right-left chicane that leads onto the Grand Prix circuit with just over 8 minutes of the race complete, Thomas Preining crosses the line in first position, but just a bit further back, Farfus is still caught behind this number 48 Porsche. And as they make their way through the chicane, that Porsche kicking up dust through the apex, Farfus is desperate to make his way past this Porsche and continue his charge through the field. As he tucks in behind that Porsche, he inches closer and closer to that 9th position. Piana defends the inside line as Farfus looks around the outside, braking as late as possible, but that Porsche is better on the brakes and Farfus falls in line behind through this tricky Yokohama S. It's so difficult to put the power down and that Porsche just pulls away under acceleration. With just over 15 minutes of the race complete, they have already begun to catch the back markers. So, as Farfus jumps out of the Kleine Carousel, he will look to use this traffic to gain an advantage on the number 48 Porsche. Through Galgenkopf that leads onto the long Dottinger Höhe straight, and the Porsche catches a slower touring car on the exit. He has to slam on the brakes, with Farfus getting a much better run coming out of the corner. Farfus is in the draft of that 48 Porsche and pulls to the left-hand side as he breezes past Piana and up into 9th place. back on the Grand Prix circuit, and Farfus has caught the back of a battling Audi and Aston Martin. Drudy, trying to find his way past that number 1 car, pokes his nose up the inside in that tricky right-hander, but Winkelhock slams the door shut. This number 1 Audi crew will do absolutely everything to defend last year's victory. But as they head into the fast chicane that leads off of the Grand Prix circuit and onto the Nordschleife, they encounter a gaggle of touring car traffic. Into this fast chicane, and the Audi is caught behind a slow touring car. The Aston Martin kicks up dust as it tries to make its way past around the outside, but Farfus tries to sneak up the inside of that 34 car, but backs out of it on the exit, thinking better of it as they work their way through this touring car traffic. Now, the Nordschleife is challenging enough when you're on your own in a GT3 car, but add slower touring cars and a battle for position, and it becomes absolutely insane as the Audi squeezes past a slower Cayman on the exit of that fast right-hander and modulates the throttle as it makes its way past that BMW as well. Farfus squeezes past through that left-hander, but has to use an unconventional line through this Hotzenbox section as he continues to close in on the 2 cars out front. But if you look to the right, you can see a yellow flag waving, and if you look further up the road, there is a flatbed circulating this track. Not an uncommon sight to have these GT3 cars battling their way past emergency and service vehicles during this 24-hour race. With that truck behind them, they power past another Cayman, and you guessed it, another BMW touring car as well, as this Audi catches a Cayman just on the entry to this ultra-fast Flugplatz corner where that Nissan had a massive airborne crash a number of years ago. The Audi continuing to hold its 7th position just ahead of this Aston Martin and BMW. Into Galgenkopf, the Audi is caught behind more traffic of, you guessed it, a BMW and Cayman touring car. Through the exit, he has to lift out of the throttle, and that will compromise his run onto this ultra-long straight. The Aston Martin of Drudy is tucked up behind and then pops to the left as he makes his way alongside and then cruises past the defending race champion number 1 Audi. All the while with Augusto Farfus tailing close behind. But with just under 45 minutes of this race complete, an interesting strategy is about to play out. That's because minimum pit stop times are determined by the number of laps completed during a stint. So, although they can go for about an hour before they need to be refueled, these 3 GT3s pull to the right-hand side and into pit lane about 2 laps early. With this shorter mandatory pit stop time, they will attempt to undercut the cars like this number 911 Porsche, which are still hammering out on track. So if we flash ahead another 15 minutes, Thomas Preining continues to lead aboard his number 911 Porsche as he makes his way past the safety vehicle and pops to the right-hand side and into pit lane. But as we mentioned, this 911 crew will have a much longer pit stop than the other cars like the 98 BMW that already pitted a few laps earlier. So as he pulls into his pit box and double parks a Toyota Supra, Preining hops out of this number 911 car and hands over to none other than Kevin Estre. But as we mentioned, with this number 911 car needing a longer pit stop, Kevin has a massive amount of work to do to catch up to the cars that are out on track. And if we jump back aboard the number 98 BMW, Farfus continues to chase down the number 1 Audi and the 34 Aston Martin, which are joined by this number 14 Mercedes of Mauro Engel, who looks to make his way past Christopher Haase as they blast past Kevin Estre, who is sitting in the pit lane. Haase defends to the inside as Engel looks around the outside into the first corner, but is not able to execute the move with that Audi being late on the brakes. Engel feathers the throttle of this thunderous V8 Mercedes as he continues to chase down the number 1 Audi. Just behind, Augusto Farfus has a front seat view of this incredible battle though, as he continues to hammer around the track, now in 6th position, having undercut 3 cars with that shorter first pit stop. With Farfus now ahead, Estre is back in 8th position and chasing down this 44 Falcon Tire Porsche. And as they make their way onto the Grand Prix circuit, Estre is tucked into the draft of that teal and blue car. And we can see that number 44 car is actually using its turn signal to let Estre know that he is free to dive up the inside into turn 1. Sure enough, he does not waste a moment in doing so as he brakes incredibly late, clips the apex, and continues to push this Porsche to its limits as he chases down the cars ahead. back aboard this number 98 BMW, and we can see that this battle pack of 4 has turned into a battle pack of 5 with the second place number 17 Mercedes just ahead of that Aston Martin. Although they're going 60 kilometers an hour, these drivers will use every opportunity to get an advantage over their competitors, including a slow zone like this. So, as they approach the line that indicates the green flag, the second place 17 Mercedes accelerates away, but the Aston Martin doesn't. The Audi hits the back of that 34 car, and just behind, the 14 Mercedes is able to sneak past, going 2 wheels on the dirt as he squeezes by that number 1 Audi and tucks in behind the Aston Martin with a now damaged rear diffuser. Into Galgenkolb, the third-placed Aston Martin encounters a Porsche 911 and clips the apex curb as he squeezes past. His run through this critical corner is compromised, and so is the Mercedes just behind. The Audi has the better run coming out of the corner and tucks into the draft of that number 14 car. Hasse pops to the right as he makes his way alongside and then past that Mercedes, but Engel is not giving up as he tucks into the side draft off the number 1 car before pulling to the left-hand side and tucking into the draft of the Aston Martin. Hasse moves back to the left-hand side, once again trying to get the side draft off of the Mercedes, and this is why we love the Nürburgring 24 hours. 2 GT3s side drafting their way down this 2-kilometer straight. Into Tiergarten, Hasse is on the outside line and thinks better of trying to go side by side through this section as he backs out of it, allowing the number 14 Mercedes of Maro Engel to retain his 4th position. Just behind, Augusto Farfus still has a front seat view of this incredible battle, but his eyes will soon be fixed on his mirrors because just behind him is now Kevin Estre, who is setting a blistering pace as he chases them down. And as his flat 6 sings down the front straight, he will try every trick in the book to catch up this number 98 BMW. He brakes impossibly late into the Yokohama S, clipping the apex curb just perfectly as he sets up this left-hander to come over this crest. It's a really tricky exit as the road falls away, but there we can see just ahead is the 98 BMW, which is entering a slow zone. But unfortunately for Farfus, he's caught behind a slow touring car. He flashes his lights, desperate to tell that BMW to speed up, but he is falling behind those GT3s out front, and Estre is closing in from behind. As I said, these slow zones can be a critical way to gain or lose time on your competitors, and unfortunately for Farfus, with him caught behind this touring car, there is absolutely nothing he can do as Estre is now all over the rear of this 98 BMW. He releases the button and slams the throttle as the rear of that BMW twitches, and Farfus desperately tries to pull away from this Porsche. We can see the strength of that BMW on the straight, but Estre is strong in the corners, brakes incredibly late into the Dunlop curve, and takes a really wide entry as he gets a late apex to try to maximize his exit speed and catch up to that BMW. Into the fast chicane, and Estre clips both apexes as he also uses all of the road on the exit as well, absolutely maximizing his track width and track knowledge as he tries to catch this number 98 BMW, nearly clipping the guardrail as well on the exit. But Farfus is caught behind yet more traffic on the exit as we can see him closing in on this Porsche Cup car out front. Through the fast right-hander, he has to slam on the brakes through the exit, and Estre is now all over the 98 BMW. But it's just about impossible to overtake through this tight and twisty section of the Nordschleife. They both use the apex curb just perfectly, both of them with so much track knowledge around here. Farfus kicking up dust, and so is Estre. It's simply mesmerizing to see these two drivers push themselves and their cars to their limits around this Nordschleife. And as they make their way into Flugplatz, they encounter yet more traffic, with Farfus caught behind this BMW touring car through this ultra-fast right-hander. He has to slam on the brakes through the second apex, and Estre has a massive run and looks to the left as he taps the rear of that 98 BMW. He might have had a massive run, but there is just nowhere to go on this narrow section of the course. And as they make their way into Schwedenkreuz, where Lorenz Vanthoor had that massive crash in qualifying, the BMW once again stretches its legs on the long straight as Estre brakes incredibly late into Arenberg, looking around the outside of the BMW that's caught in traffic, but he falls in line behind on the exit as they once again power their way past the slower traffic. Through another fast section of the course, and Farfus is once again caught behind slower traffic. Estre has a huge run, but has to hit the brakes. He is once again within touching distance, but this time decides not to touch. Into Moot Curve, Farfus begins to pull away, but is once again trapped behind a slower touring car. Estre tucks in behind this BMW that squeezes past through the exit of Moot Curve as Estre pokes his nose up the inside, but Farfus is much too experienced to have that affect him. Farfus brakes incredibly late for this tight right-hander, but once again, a tale as old as time here at the Nürburgring. He is caught behind slower touring car traffic as they make their way into the carousel. Estre looks around the outside though. A really unconventional move from Estre, but there is so much less grip on this outside line as Estre tucks back into the banking behind the BMW. Farfus trapped behind that BMW as they make their way past a Porsche Cayman through this fast left-hander. The BMW touring car stays to the right-hand side as Farfus squeezes past and uses its turn signal to let Estre know that he should squeeze past as well on the left-hand side. Communication is key here at the Nürburgring as Estre continues to chase down this 98 BMW. With another lap complete, Estre continues to chase down this 98 BMW. But through the chicane, he will encounter a scenario that he is not expecting, because as he powers out of the Yokohama S, we can see Augusto Farfus is slowing down, and if we look to the right-hand side, we can see that a red flag is waving. That's because, bizarrely enough, there is a power outage in the pit lane. So as Farfus trundles down this incredibly congested pit lane and double parks numerous cars, the organizers are getting to work to quickly restore power and get this race back underway. So, as Estre noses into his pit box right next to that orange McLaren, the teams have a unique opportunity to service their cars during this blackout, and the drivers have an opportunity to have a quick rest. But with power restored, the field is regridded and actually reshuffled as well. That's because to avoid any unfairness due to shorter pit stop times, cars were given penalties determined by how long that initial pit stop was. Therefore, this 98 BMW has been shuffled back to 9th position for the restart, but is still behind that number 1 Audi and 34 Aston Martin. Meanwhile, up front, this number 911 Porsche, which took that longer first pit stop, is once again in the lead of the race, albeit with Kevin Estre followed closely behind by that teal-nosed number 33 Falcon Tire Porsche. Estre slams the throttle as the race goes back to green, and he tries to build a gap on that teal-nosed car. Back in 9th position, Van Der Linde wastes absolutely no time as he powers past the number 1 Audi of Christopher Haase and up into 8th position as he closes in on the 34 Aston Martin of Niki Team. Into turn 1, he pokes his nose up the inside, but is just not close enough to go for a move as he clips the apex. The Aston Martin is wide through the second apex, and Van Der Linde gets a better run coming out of the corner and is up into 7th position as the 17 Mercedes and 28 Lamborghini battle for position just out front into this fast left-hander. The Mercedes falls in line behind the Lamborghini, but into this long right-hander, Van Der Linde looks around the outside of that 17 car, which slams the door shut on the exit, but Van Der Linde has a run heading down the hill. The Mercedes defends to the right-hand side, and Van Der Linde tries to brake incredibly late in this Dunlop corner. He goes around the outside of the Mercedes and nearly the Lamborghini as well, as he is now up into 6th position. He uses every inch of road on the exit as he closes in on this number 28 car. He looks around the outside into the Schumacher S, but thinks better of it as he falls in line behind this Lamborghini. Clearly, Van Der Linde was taking notes from Farfus's incredible first stint. Into this left-hander, the Lamborghini runs really wide of the apex, and Van Der Linde has a massive run coming out of the corner. He takes a really wide entry to try to set a better exit from this critical right-hander. He uses every inch of road as he pokes his nose to the left-hand side, going 2 wheels in the dirt as he powers past the 28 car up into 5th position. What an incredible, incredible first lap around the Grand Prix circuit. But as Van Der Linde slices his way through the field, Estre is being hounded by this 33 Porsche that gets impossibly close to the wall on the exit as Picariello pushes that 33 car and chases down the number 911. As this opening lap continues, this 98 BMW chases the Ferrari through Galgenkopf and gets a great run onto the long Donninger Straight. He tucks into the draft of Fernandez Lazar, who won the 2023 edition driving, you guessed it, a Ferrari GT3. So this driver and car combination are a proven entity at this Nürburgring 24 Hours. as they reach VMAX. The BMW just begins to stall, and that Ferrari stretches its Italian legs, staying just ahead through Tiergarten. Van Der Linde breathes out of the throttle as they make their way into this really tricky braking zone, just missing that wall on the left as they clip the apex curb on the right and then slam on the throttle as they make their way back onto the Grand Prix circuit. Van Der Linde is tucked into the draft of the Ferrari, and as he makes his way down the front straight and across the start-finish line, he closes in, looks to the right-hand side. The Ferrari tries to defend the position, but Van Der Linde goes around the outside and breezes past the Ferrari up into 4th position, nearly on the podium in this number 98 car. But just ahead, Estre is being hounded by the 33 Falcon Porsche as they weave their way through the touring car traffic. Through that left-right chicane into miss-hit-miss, Estre encounters some slower touring cars. He looks around the outside of a Cayman, but is blocked with 2 touring cars going side by side. Piccirillo tries to find his way past, but has nowhere to go as he tucks in behind Estre, who goes around the outside of the Cayman through that slow corner, sliding the rear of his Porsche. Estre would love to have some breathing room, but Piccirillo is putting a huge amount of pressure on this Grello 911 Porsche. With a battle raging for first position, Van Der Linde has caught the 3rd place number 14 Mercedes, which squeezes past a BMW as they make their way onto the Grand Prix circuit. There might still be nearly 20 hours of the race remaining, but the battle for the podium is intensifying as the sun begins to set. And as they hammer down the front straight, Lukas Stolz tries to pull away from the 98 BMW just behind, but Van Der Linde is not letting him go anywhere. He darts to the inside, trying to distract this Mercedes driver, and Stolz is slightly wide through the first apex, braking as late as possible in that number 14 Mercedes. His exit is very slightly compromised as Van Der Linde has closed the gap on that number 14 car. Down the hill into this fast left-hander, Van Der Linde pokes his nose up the inside for an aggressive overtake through that left-hander, but Stolz is not giving up and fights back through this long right-hander, but that BMW squeezes past on the outside and claims a podium position with just 1 car separating him from the number 911 of Kevin Estre. And sure enough, with the sun now having set, Van Der Linde has caught that number 33 Porsche, which is 2nd position, and as he hammers down the front straight, is within touching distance of 2nd place. And as he flies into turn 1, he slams on the brake and closes in on that 33 car through the right-left sequence, and Lauer tries to pull away, but hits a stationary Porsche Cup car with Van Der Linde nearly making contact as well. Here at the Nürburgring, you never know what lurks around the corner, and just like that, Andlauer in that 33 Porsche's race is over, and Van Der Linde is now in 2nd position and chasing down the number 911 Porsche. And sure enough, as Saturday becomes Sunday, just ahead of this number 98 car is that number 911 Porsche of Kevin Estre. The BMW has spent the past 14 hours hammering in fast laps and closing in on this Grello car. So as Marciello makes his way through Dunlop and closes in on this Grello Porsche, the battle for the victory at the Nürburgring 24 Hours comes down to 2 of the biggest names in German motorsport, Manthey Porsche and ROWE BMW. And as they sweep through the ultra-fast Flugplatz and kick up dust on the exit, Marciello uses the straight-line speed of this BMW to close in on the Porsche of Kevin Estre, who is just behind the ultra-fast but somewhat delayed number 27 Lamborghini. Into Schwedenkreuz, and Estre just taps the brakes as he carries as much speed as humanly possible through that fast left-hander and then brakes incredibly late into Arenberg. He closes in on the 27 Lamborghini, who pulls to the right-hand side to allow not only Estre, but also the BMW to make their way past. And as they head down into the foxhole, that BMW is once again closing in on the straightaways. They carry humongous speed in this Arenberg section, just missing that curb on the left-hand side, going through this fast right-hander, and then hitting the brakes as you hit this tight left-hander into another slow right-hander. The BMW just in front holding up that Porsche of Kevin Estre, but using its turn signal to let Estre know that he will stay to the left, and Estre should pass to the right-hand side, but that traffic has held him up, and Marciello is now within touching distance of the 911 Porsche, and the race lead. Into this fast left-right sequence, Estre closes in on an Aston Martin GT4 as he carries massive speed over this crest and down into the tight right-hander. The road falls away and then catches you through the apex. Estre closing in now on that Aston Martin GT4 through this left-right sequence that leads into miss-hit-miss. Estre pokes his nose up the inside, but the gap disappears. He climbs the curb and hits the Aston Martin, which is sent spinning to left-hand side, and the BMW has to jump over the curb to avoid being collected by that GT4 car. We can look just behind and see from Jordan Pepper that Aston Martin was hit and then flips as the BMW goes flying, trying to avoid that Aston Martin. In the blink of an eye, the entire race is literally flipped on its head. Now, I'm sure you've probably already seen a replay of this incident and probably have formed your own opinion, so I'm not here to change that, but I do want to share my thoughts with you. So if you're not interested, please, I encourage you to skip ahead about a minute to avoid my entire monologue. But all I want to say isn't that I agree or disagree with the stewards. I just want to say that racing doesn't happen in a freeze frame or in slow motion. So when people share a freeze frame or a slow motion video and say, why didn't he think X, Y, and Z? Or didn't he know ABC? What I'm here to tell you is they don't think. That is the reality of racing in these high pressure, high stakes moments where millisecond decisions have dramatic consequences. These drivers aren't thinking, they are acting purely on instinct because that is what is required of them. That instinct was correct hundreds of times throughout this race, but also sometimes that instinct leads to race-ending outcomes, as was the case with Estre and also was the case with the 98 BMW of Van Der Linde. Again, I'm not trying to convince you that what these drivers did was right or wrong. All I'm trying to convince you is that these drivers are pushing themselves, their machines, and each other to the absolute limit in the quest for one of the most prestigious victories in all of endurance racing. Anyways, thank you for listening to my TED Talk, but let's get back to the racing because there are still over 5.5 hours remaining and the top step of the podium is still up for grabs. So as Estre powers down the front straight, Raffaele Marciello will pull to the right-hand side and into pit lane. Now, the way the pit stop strategy has shaken out in this race is the Porsche and BMW will race together for about 45 minutes, then the BMW will come in and make a pit stop, the Porsche will be out on track out front for about 15 minutes, and then when the Porsche pits, they once again rejoin that 45 minutes of battling. But we just saw that as Raffaele Marciello pulled into his pit box, Augusto Farfus, the man with that incredible first stint, was on his way to hop into the number 98. So with Farfus all strapped in and ready to go, the battling once again resumes out on circuit. And with Farfus at VMAX as he makes his way through Tiergarten and into the final corner of this Nordschleife circuit, we can see that GRELLO Porsche is just ahead, now with Güven behind the wheel as he powers past a Hyundai touring car. This battle for the race lead is once again reignited between this 911 Porsche and 98 BMW. Farfus once again uses the power of this BMW to close in on the long front straight. Güven defends to the inside, and Farfus looks around the outside. He brakes as late as he possibly can, but Güven is later on the brakes and sails past on the inside, holding on to that first position. But although this Porsche is ahead on track, the officials have given Kevin Estre in the 911 car a 1 minute and 40-second time penalty for that contact that was made with the Aston Martin GT4. So, although Güven is technically ahead, if Farfus were to finish this close behind the number 911 car, the positions would be swapped and the 98 BMW would win the 2025 24 Hours of Nürburgring. So, Güven needs to not only stay ahead of Farfus, but he needs to push as hard as he can to build a 1 minute and 40-second gap for them to claim that elusive Nürburgring 24-hour victory. But building a gap on that ultra-fast BMW of Augusto Farfus is going to be easier said than done, especially with this GRELLO Porsche caught behind slow zone traffic. And as they make their way past the scene of that accident, Güven is plodding his way to get past this Porsche Cayman as quickly as possible and build a gap on that 98 BMW. Güven is absolutely itching to go as he stalks this Cayman on the left-hand side, waiting for that green flag to drop. Finally it does, and he accelerates away, but with Farfus directly behind him. And with just 2 corners remaining until they're on the long Doningahue straight, Güven desperately needs to build a gap to this BMW that we know is faster in a straight line. Into Galgenkopf, and there is traffic ahead for this number 911 Porsche. Güven absolutely sends it through the entry and ducks to the right-hand side through the apex, kicking up dust in the process as he desperately tries to make his way through this corner as quickly as possible, kicking up dust on the exit as well as he tucks into the draft of another Cayman. all the while with Farfus hunting down this number 911 car. Güven ducks to the left to try to keep this number 98 out of his draft. But this BMW has so much more straight line performance and easily makes his way past Güven and up into the race lead on track. Güven sweeps to the right-hand side and into the draft of that number 98 BMW, but even in the draft, the BMW of Farfus is pulling away. After leading nearly the entire race and seeming like a shoo-in for victory, the tides have turned in this 2025 Nürburgring 24 Hours. The BMW is now in the driver's seat, having both the pace advantage, the on-track advantage, and the time advantage with that penalty. But as his stint comes to an end, Farfus once again pulls into the pit lane and will hand over to Van Der Linde, who will finish the race aboard this 98 BMW. And with Van Der Linde hopping aboard that number 98 car, Güven will pull into his pit box to hand over to Grello's closer, Kevin Estre. So as Güven gives his final instructions to Kevin Estre with an hour and 41 minutes remaining in the race, his task is simple but so challenging: to build a 1 minute and 40-second gap to that 98 BMW. As the final chapter of this 2025 Nürburgring 24 Hours progresses, we can see that this 98 BMW still has the pace advantage over that 911 Porsche. And although Kevin Estre is back ahead with how the pit stops shook out, this BMW has that 1 minute and 40-second advantage. So just like Güven, he needs to not only keep this BMW behind, but also build a massive gap back to claim another historic victory for Manthey and Grello. But Van Der Linde is on his tail. This BMW has come to life on Sunday and is now hounding the number 911 Porsche. And as they make their way into Bergwerk, Estre is pushing the limits in his Porsche and runs really wide of the apex as he tries to maximize his exit onto this long straight that leads through Metzgesfeld and into Moot Curve. As they power down the straight, we know that is the Porsche's weakness and the BMW's advantage. So through this ultra-fast, flat-out left-hander, Kelvin Van Der Linde actually breathes out of the throttle. I don't know if you heard that, but he is breathing out of the throttle, staying just behind this Porsche. He doesn't need to take any risks at this point. He knows he has that 1 minute and 40-second advantage. He knows he has the pace advantage. All he needs to do is stay close to this 911 Porsche and not let Kevin Estre out of his sights. But he doesn't need to take any risks. So with Estre using every inch of the circuit and pushing this Porsche to its absolute limits, you get the feeling it's a bit helpless aboard that 911 car because Van Der Linde is just following his every move, shadowboxing that Grello Porsche and staying close enough to be able to easily claim that top step of the podium. Into the carousel, Estre sends it up the inside of Jimmy Broadbent's BMW as the BMW follows him through this world-famous corner. And through Ice Curve, you can see Estre is still struggling a bit aboard his Manthey Porsche as that BMW now has the advantage in the straights, but also it seems in the corners as well. Estre is just hanging on as he goes through the jump into this fast right-hander, Van Der Linde, all the while following Estre's every move as he stays close to this 911 Porsche. Through this ultra-fast and challenging left-hander, the car jumps to the right-hand side of the road as the front wheels leave the ground through there. Then through the Beloff S's, Estre continues to push, continues to be flat out, continues to do everything possible, but it just seems inevitable at this point that the 98 BMW has all of their moves covered. Through the fast left-hander that leads into the Kleines Carousel, and Estre pops to the inside of that Porsche Cup car, but once again Van Der Linde is right there as well, tucked up behind that 911's rear wing. Into Galgenkalk, Estre uses every inch of road on the entry as he makes his way back to the left-hand side there, trying to maximize his exit as much as possible as he pushes this Porsche to its limits through the exit. But just behind is Kelvin Van Der Linde in that BMW. And as he tucks into the draft, it seems inevitable that he will pass and take the race lead once again. As he inches closer and closer and closer to Grello, he pops to the left-hand side and breathes out of the throttle. He does not need to overtake this Porsche. All he needs to do is stay within 1 minute and 40 seconds of this number 911 car. So as they make their way through Tiergarten, he stays behind that 911 car, still shadowing Estre's every move. And with both cars still requiring one more pit stop, Van Der Linde pulls to the right-hand side to let Kelvin Estre circulate by himself. Now, obviously, with that Porsche pitting later in this race, it will require a shorter pit stop. So, with 0 minutes left on the clock, Estre has stayed ahead of that number 98 BMW as he pushes still to the limit, trying to push that time gap out to 1 minute and 40 seconds to that 98 car. He crosses the start-finish line in first place, taking the checkered flag for Manthey and Grello. But just behind, unfortunately for Estre, is that number 98 BMW. And as Kelvin Van Der Linde crosses the start-finish line in second position, he claims the victory for BMW and ROWE Racing. What an iconic victory, race, and battle it was. The ROWE BMW, who started in 17th position, taking the race victory ahead of the number 911 Porsche that led for nearly the entire race. And while it is euphoria aboard the 98 BMW, it is heartbreak aboard the 911 Porsche. Kelvin Estre having come in second place at Le Mans 24 Hours the previous weekend with his incredible performance in that number 6 Porsche, once again coming in second position this weekend at the Nürburgring 24 Hours. And I have to also mention an incredible podium finish for the number 54 Dynamic GT Pirelli Porsche with none other than Luke Hartog behind the wheel. So Luke, if you're watching too, congrats man, we love you. Anyways, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and so much for supporting as Kelvin Van Der Linde breaks the third wall and gives you guys a heart as well. I love you guys. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the love. It means so much to me. I want to give a special shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for all the love and support. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. What an incredible month of June it was. And I can't wait to see you in the next video.